All your 20s, you kind of work your way through different jobs. And usually by the end of your 20s, you think you have an idea of what you want to do. And then when you get there, like for me, it was corporate retail and merchandising. I looked around and said, this isn't quite it, actually.
Welcome to the Trades Show. This is a show about modern craft work. Each episode, I step into the workshops of skilled artisans across industries, from metalsmithing and butchery to woodworking and shoe cobbling. I'm your host, Briana Ottoboni. The Trades Show explores what it means to be a craft worker, the revival of the artisan trades, and the return to what makes us human, the ability to make with our hands. Because in every trade, there's a rhythm. The whir of a lathe, the hiss of a solder, the slice of a blade. And through these rhythms, we return to ourselves. Because making isn't just what we do, it's who we are. I'm so glad you're here. Today on the Trade Show, I sit down with Lindsay Knox, jewelry designer, maker, and founder of Ladha. We dive into her journey from retail to jewelry maker, the inspiration behind her brand, the vision for its future, and what it means to think small when scaling a small business. Our conversation today takes place inside Lindsay's studio in Oakland, California. Thank you so much for sitting down to talk with me. I always start out by asking the same two questions. So the first is, how would you describe your craft, what you do, what it means to you?
I would describe myself as a jewelry designer versus metalsmith or jeweler. I do all of those things also, but I design jewelry first and foremost, and I make it by hand. And I utilize trade partners, but all the designs come from me. So I'm a designer first.
Beautiful. And bring us into your world a little bit. What does a day in your life look like?
I wake up, I get my kids ready for school, get everyone out the door, and then I head straight to the studio. I usually come in, grab a coffee, check my emails, make sure I send tracking information, little logistical things, pay invoices, take care of all the kind of back end computer work. And then depending on what my workflow is like, I'll either just go straight to the bench and start making jewelry, or I will sit down and maybe make some sketches or fool around with my stones for stone placement. It really varies on any given day, just based on whatever deliverable is due, whether it's a custom engagement ring or a bulk delivery for a retailer. So it changes from day to day.
Okay, and I want to go back a little bit. You said getting your kids ready for school, and I know that when you first started Ladha, you were about to have your second child, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
Can you bring us back to the beginning? How did Ladha start?
Sure.
Yeah.
In around 2015, I was going through a transition. I was coming out of a career in corporate retail and basically just couldn't handle looking at another spreadsheet. The work was not creative enough for me, even though I was working in product categories like jewelry and apparel, but it was more like 20% creative and 80% analytical and financial. So I just got really burnt out and decided to just take some classes for fun in the evenings, learning how to metalsmith. And I just fell in love with taking courses and ended up taking the same intro course 3 times.
How did you decide metalsmithing classes?
I had a friend who designed jewelry. Her name's Colleen Maurer. She's very well known these days in the independent jewelry world. And I used to help her out at craft shows way back in the day when she'd pop up and do different events. I kind of offered myself as just like an assistant to her since I had the retail training and I could sell things. And then I got really inspired by her and what she was designing and said, I want to learn that one day. I think at some point I'll try to get into this. So that's kind of where it started. And then once I started taking courses on my own, I just felt a little spark.
Yeah. And how did you follow that spark to design your own jewelry, to launch your own collection?
As I learned more and more about the craft and as I got to do it more and more hands-on, it just felt right and it felt exciting and inspiring. And so after taking a whole summer off to learn jewelry, I just decided to just pivot hard and really get my feet wet, as they say. So I was working in jewelry stores and working for other designers, making their designs as a bench jeweler. So just working at the bench, just basically creating other people's designs and selling them on the sales floor as well. And just gathering so much knowledge, just like a sponge. And after a while, you can only make someone else's jewelry for so long. So I started having my own ideas and making little things in my spare time or staying late so that I could work on my own craft. And that time professionally coincided with a personal moment where I had just been married the year before. I kind of launched into this new world, and first comes marriage, then comes the baby carriage, as they say. So I really just said yes to a million things at once, and it all kind of started to work itself out in terms of mothering at home and starting my family life, and then diving into this new profession that I was just really excited about. So it was like a starting of a chapter, so to speak.
Yeah, I would love for you to talk a little bit about that kind of chapter transition. I think you hear so much when people get to the other side, and that's where you are now. You work on this full time. But what was that in between like when you were designing jewelry for yourself, also working as a bench jeweler, and transitioning to launching your own collection and then building that to be what it is?
Yeah, I think that it was just really eye-opening to be working under other established jewelry designers and selling their work and making their work and realizing, oh my gosh, you really can monetize this. Like, this could actually be a career versus a hobby, which is something that I had always thought of jewelry making as just something you would do on the side or dabble in. And then once I was exposed to other, especially female makers who were also mothers and who were also in a certain time in their life where they wanted like flexibility, but then were also empowering themselves and each other as entrepreneurs, like that was really inspiring for me. All your 20s, you kind of work your way through different jobs, and usually by the end of your 20s, you think you have an idea of what you want to do. And then when you get there, like for me, it was corporate retail and merchandising. I looked around and said, this isn't quite it, actually. Again, the exposure that I got in pivoting just kind of snowballed, and I was able to build on that inspiration and get a little more confidence to go out on my own eventually and try it myself for real. So.
Yeah, and when we talked on the phone, you talked about how really identity has shaped your business so much, and Ladha is woman-owned, Black-owned, mother-owned, and you talked a little bit about the inspiration of seeing these other female jewelry designers who were also moms, who were also doing this full time. How did they inspire your work? How did they inspire just your process?
It really actually started, if I go way back to the women in my family who weren't artists per se, but always collecting art. My mom and my aunt traveled the world a ton before I was even born. They were buying art in Africa and China and had a wholesale business. Meanwhile, they were collecting jewelry just because they appreciated it. So growing up, there was a lot of different craft in my world, and whether it's textiles or sculpture or paintings or prints or jewelry. And seeing just the collector and the stack of bangles and the rings that never came off and the big hoops that my mom, my aunt, my sister lived in as I was growing up, like that coupled with meeting and interacting with other designers who were like my mother and my aunt. They were working, they were wives, they were mothering, they were doing all these things, but also pursuing creative passions. Then to the designers who were committed to doing jewelry full time and growing their businesses and growing teams and expanding and foraying into different product categories of fine jewelry versus traditional metalsmithing. It felt for me like an all paths meet here moment. So I draw inspiration from any woman who's strong and confident and artistic, whether she's a designer or a mother or an auntie or a friend.
Okay, I want to dive into your style of your designs in a second, but can you go back a little bit to what you said about how when you were working as a bench jeweler, you were seeing that this could be something that you could do full time instead of just a hobby? And what were some of the key distinctions that you found of What makes it possible to be a jeweler full-time and pursue this as a career and not just a craft that you're working on the side?
Yeah, it was really cool to get to see the back end of it because, on Instagram or in the stores, you're looking at the physical jewelry, you're seeing only the finished product and these beautiful shiny things that are obviously so inspiring and just gorgeous. You're enthralled. But then to see the back end of it, working like literally alongside another female business owner who's making the calls regarding the marketing and the packaging and the cost of goods. And so like a sponge, I was there tinkering away, making things for others, but also kind of listening in on the meetings and seeing the diamond dealer come and set up and things that I just hadn't really been exposed to previously. And so
what are some of those things?
Yeah, I would say you wear many hats, right? So there's everything from photo shoots where you're photographing your work so it can go on a website. There's website maintenance. There's meeting with your bookkeeper to categorize your expenses. There's just straight up marketing, watching an email blast get created or a lookbook to bring to a trade show. There's just so many things that come with the territory, and it obviously all starts with the making. It's kind of endless.
Yeah. Business is obviously my background, but when you are selling your craft, you become a business person overnight. Yes. And so how did you learn the business side of things, and what are all the different pieces? You talked about them a little bit, but what are the different components that you're doing everything on?
It was also a good thing that I had started out in retail, kind of behind the scenes retail, because I understood about margins and sales analytics and some of that, the merchandising side of it. But then going from a big box retailer to a small designer, instead of there being a team for each thing, there's one person doing all of it. And I think that there was no better way for me to learn that than just to see it firsthand. And so when I started my own business, I knew, okay, here's what I need first. First, I need a website. Then I need photos for the website. Then I need maybe a graphic designer to help me refine that website. Then I need some business cards. Then I'm going to use the photography that the photographer did to use on my postcards and my business cards. But overall, I would say the main categories are like marketing, finance, so having like a bookkeeper or someone who can help you, even a software program to help you stay organized, stick to your sales goals, look at your revenue, make sure that you're not overspending. That part is huge. Then there's your vendor partners. Who are you getting your materials from? You have relationships with people who do your casting, maybe. They're like in metals, or you have your gemstone dealer who you'll meet with periodically to source stones for new designs. And then there's companies where you're just ordering things like clasps and earring backs and the little teeny tiny components that you use to make the jewelry. So I think it's a lot of materials and it's a lot of kind of back end systems, really.
Okay, start from sourcing. What's the process of creating a piece of jewelry?
You can go about it a few different ways.
What's your process?
Yeah, so I myself pull from different processes. So I'm not necessarily a fabricator, someone who makes things from scratch, meaning a piece of wire that then turns into a ring setting. Sometimes I'm carving a piece in jeweler's wax and then I'm having it cast and that piece is then directly translated into the metal. Sometimes I'm using the help of a CAD designer who will take those very specific dimensions I give them for a stone or the width of a band or the height of a stone setting and giving me a model based off of my design preferences. And then other times it is fabrication, taking two elements and literally soldering them together, setting the stone myself and using different tools. So the process, it depends. Typically, when it comes to my line that I wholesale out to retailers and that I have available on my site, a lot of that came from wax carving. That's my favorite method to work in because it's so intuitive. It's literally sculpting.
What makes it intuitive?
You're just using your fingers and you're starting with essentially just a ball of wax, as they say, and refining it down into an actual wearable piece of jewelry. So it could be a sheet where I'm warming it with my hands and then I'm actually molding it and shaping it into a form. Or it could be a ring blank, just like a chunky wax cylinder with a hole in it. And I'm literally using my file to get it to the shape and the finish and the texture that I want it to. So I enjoy that because I'm able to really get into flow state when I work that way. And it's just this intuition to know when to stop, when to keep going.
Yeah, it's like the art of reduction.
Exactly. And then once you hit that, oh, this is what I envisioned, you're like, great, I did that. And I did it all pretty much from scratch. So that's my typical method.
And how would you describe your designs? I feel like there's almost kind of an heirloom quality when I look at them, but what really inspires them for you, or how would you describe them?
I would describe my jewelry as wearable, but interesting. Okay. So I love to use the term like laid back looks, because the very first thing I designed was actually the hoop earrings that I'm wearing now. They're chunky, kind of golden. They're made from bronze and they have sterling ear posts. But I just was dying for a giant pair of gold earrings that wasn't going to be heavy or cost $1 million. I would sit down and make what I was looking for. And I was always keeping comfort in mind, price point, trying to remain accessible to some extent, and just have something traditional like a hoop earring, but that had a little twist to it. These have a little ridge motif that runs through the middle, and that just kind of sets them apart from just...
feels almost kind of antique.
Yeah, it's kind of antique. It's kind of ethnic. I'm inspired often by like African jewelry or things that I saw the women in my life wearing growing up. They would be sourcing jewelry in Turkey and Egypt. And so all this very luxe gold, but wearable and versatile and heirloom quality, like you said, but also with like a little twist or maybe a little organic quality that makes it not look so mass produced or just more handmade. So yeah, I would say less can be more can be more. So I'm like, oh, how about a wide hoop, but it's nice and smooth? How about a diamond ring, but in a nice clean bezel setting without a bunch of frilly things around it? So mixing and matching, feeling comfortable day to night, like all of those things I'm thinking about when I'm designing, because I don't ever really want my customers to have to choose a lane. It's just more about what can I collect and wear and mix into my daily life, whether I'm at like a cocktail party or like school drop off in the morning.
And where are you looking for inspiration for some of these?
I'm in my mind, like literally looking through my mom's jewelry box as a little girl, pulling out things that really just sparked a joy and trying things on. And I go back to my inner child and remember like the first pieces that really caught my eye. And then I'm also inspired by...
What were some of those?
Oh, like my mom had big hoops, big kind of square shaped, shiny gold hoops, or a bracelet stack, whether it's chains or bangles, the sound of bangles, or even these little permanent bracelets I wear. I didn't make, but they remind me of cable chains that I would see kind of wrapped around. Or so definitely my family has inspired me, and like the world traveler collector vibe that was happening with the matriarchs in my family. But I'm also just inspired by history. You know, I love like Roman jewelry from the ancient times, ancient Egyptian jewelry.
Where do you go to look for things like that?
Museums. I lived in New York in college. I used to go to the Met and just stare at the cases of Egyptian jewelry and the Egyptian wing. And
I love everyone has their spot in the Met.
I go straight to the Egyptian wing, or I'd be in the ancient Greek area where you're just looking at these beautiful pieces that are insanely
I'm in the Impressionist room.
Yes. I love all the rooms, honestly. But yeah, museums, books. I love like a good coffee table book. And I also just follow accounts on Instagram that are ancient jewelry accounts where people just post really cool things that you're just like, wow, this thing has been around for literally thousands of years. People are still making signet rings just like the ones that the ancient Romans made, and Egyptian cartouche, vibes and things that just never left. It's like a hieroglyph, like a flat plain ring or a pendant that has like a hieroglyph like name or message on it. But it's just certain styles of jewelry. Hoop earrings, like I said, or beaded necklaces, but with like cast beads instead of glass beads. Just things that I see where I'm like, okay, this is not going anywhere because it's literally been around since the beginning of civilization.
Yeah. So, and it's metal.
It's metal, and it'll last. And people are still discovering artifacts from the ancient times that you could literally dig it up and clean it up and see it in...
Or wear it.
Yeah, or wear it today. Exactly.
Oh, I love that. And okay, I want to talk a little bit more about the business side of things. And you are making jewelry and thinking about price point and wanting it to be accessible, but balancing staying small and not becoming mass produced. And how do you think about that? And how do you integrate that into your process?
Yeah, I mean, at one point, I think I was really, I won't say afraid, but kind of apprehensive about that part of it. Once I felt my wholesale presence growing, meaning providing jewelry for other stores to sell while they're representing me, I started to get really overwhelmed doing it all myself. I would just be locked in at the workbench, just going through the motions, making 20, 30, 40 pieces for a shipment. And it was fun at first, and it felt really cool to get faster at things and be more efficient. But at the end of the day, because I wear so many other hats and I have to dedicate time to multiple projects at once in any given day, I realized that finding good trade partners was essential and really the only way that I was going to be able to grow. Honestly, like the hunt for the right people is pretty challenging, and you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find the right folks who
What makes someone a good partner for you?
I would say good communication, quality workmanship.
How are you testing that?
So most of my designs, especially just like from my core collection, I will design the piece in wax, I will have it cast in a metal, and then I'll have it molded in a silicone mold. That way, the piece can be reproduced as many times as I want. So I would find someone, say, okay, I really need a bronze caster, someone who can cast my bronze jewelry, polish it, finish it, adhere a hook or a post or a clasp, and just send me 20, 30 pieces of one design so that I can pick and pull for different orders or web customers or whoever. So first thing I would do is ask around. I feel like word of mouth is the best way to learn about who's reliable and who does good work. And I'm lucky to be a part of a really expansive community of jewelers here in the Bay Area. So we have a group chat, there's message boards, and you can see people in person at events and say, who's making your stuff? Would you mind sharing their contact? And you share information that way. So once I got a good lead, I would send a couple molds and say, can you make me some samples? Here's exactly how I finish this piece. Here's exactly how I polish it. Here's exactly how it should look when it's finished. Just being really clear up front, and then getting the samples back and weighing it against my own handmade finished piece. And if they check all my boxes and they followed my instructions and did it the way that I would essentially be doing it myself, then I'm like, great, let's go for it. And I'll send them the bulk of my molds. And that way I know that nothing's really changing. They're just doing the labor for me, basically. But the design at the end of the day is going to look the same. And it first felt like cheating because I'm not hand making every single piece. But I remember I had to remind myself, like, you made the original. You have the master of this mold that someone's using to reproduce it. But, you know, it's your design. You own it. You made it from the beginning. And they're just following your lead, essentially.
And how do you decide what pieces of your process you want to outsource, and keeping the integrity and also keeping the things that you like doing?
Yeah. My business is comprised of two different categories. So I have a fashion collection that's bronze and silver. Those are the more chunky, hefty pieces, the more casual, I guess you could say, part of my line. And then I have a fine category where it's solid gold, diamonds and gemstones, much more refined, much more technical when it comes to things like stone setting and materials. So I tend to keep the fine for myself. I love to polish gold. I love to interact with gold. And so for my fine
what about
jewelry,
it do you like?
It's gold. It's special. It's precious. It's more minimal quantities. So it feels just more special in a way. They're all my babies, all my designs. But for the bronze and silver, that's really my bread and butter. And that kind of really fuels the fine category because I can sell a million hoops at a lower price point and then get the funds that I need to push into my fine category, which obviously costs more to make. And I don't mind paying someone to polish 20 pairs of these. But what really makes me super excited is setting a diamond in a gold bezel and polishing it myself and seeing that more luxury design come to life. But, it switches around. Sometimes I want to work on the bronze myself, and sometimes I'm okay with doing it all from start to finish. But when it comes to wholesaling and bulk, it gives me more time to focus on the little things that I want to really get right when someone else can just kind of take the fashion category and run with it.
And what are the different stages of business growth that you've had before you can even think about outsourcing or producing? What led you to this point, or what were the kind of different phases that your business has had?
Yeah, it's really cool to think back on that because there have been many. I went from working for another jeweler and doing my own stuff as a true side hustle, just like in my garage, tinkering on the weekends or while my babies were napping or whatever. And then eventually I said, I guess I should start an Instagram account and a website. And I just literally took my Instagram photos and plopped them on a super simple Squarespace website.
That's what you do it.
And then I was kind of selling to friends and family and kind of getting the word out just within my local community. The next phase would have been starting to do shows and showing up in person, having enough of a collection to display and sell to direct consumers. So I started doing local craft fairs, local pop-ups.
How do you get involved in those?
It's really like word of mouth is a great way to do it, or just attending them. Like I'm just that type of person. I'm my own customer. So
Perfect.
I love to go to craft fairs and get inspired and look at what people are making, whether it's ceramics or vintage clothes or glass or whatever it is. So I was a customer at those craft fairs. So I kind of had an idea of, I think I would fit really well within this show or that show. And then word of mouth, again, the more people you talk to, hey, you know what? I think you would do really well at this little show. I just went last weekend. You should reach out to them. Then you start getting on mailing lists and following Instagram accounts, and you get a little more attuned with the rhythm and the timing of shows and just apply.
Do you still do shows?
I do. I'm doing one pop-up on Saturday at a wine shop, and then the following weekend I'm doing a 2-day show, which is going to have over 200 vendors. It's a show I've been doing consistently for 4 years now.
This episode will be out after
Okay,
those,
cool.
but
Well,
do you have any
there's
coming up
always
later in the
more.
summer?
There's probably not so much this summer. I, from year to year, take on either a lot of in-person things or maybe not so much. To get back to my phases of business, the next thing after selling direct and getting people to buy things from me in person on a one-off basis, eventually then you realize, okay, maybe if people like this stuff and they actually want to wear it and buy it from me, maybe I should start reaching out to retailers so that I can generate more business by other people helping to sell it. I have a big wholesale show in August. It's a trade show where there's 800 different artisans and makers that show up, and buyers come from all over the country and they write orders that might span a whole year. So once I started getting into the wholesale sphere, in-person events maybe were not as, like smaller in-person pop-ups and things like that are not always as plentiful, because I'm then prepping for something where people might be placing multiple orders for bulk deliveries over a certain span of months. So you have to weigh your own bandwidth and pause and start the different channels depending on the time of year and the wholesale market calendar, which people want to buy in August for Christmas. They want to buy in February for summer. So start falling into this cadence of, okay, I know when to plan my smaller events in between these kind of big bursts of production and showing up.
And when did you get to a point with your either direct-to-consumer line or the next phase of wholesale where you started to need to think about outsourcing and expanding your capacity?
I think it was probably after the first trade show I did. I could toil away and make enough to sustain a 1-day or 2-day market just locally, making sure I had enough ring sizes, making sure I had enough inventory to sell to people over the span of a weekend as one-off purchases. When I started doing trade shows and people were responding to my line, then you start thinking about, oh my gosh, when I come home and I have these orders from these amazing stores and I've essentially promised a lead time or a delivery date on that order based on when they need it, do I have the capacity to do all this by myself? And it's really exciting and wonderful to be wanted in that way. But at the same time, you tend to come back home and go, oh my God, how am I going to pull this off? So that's really when I started thinking about trying to find partners in the trade who could help me do the bulk production. Again, I'm still here doing it myself, different product categories, or I keep things for myself. But overall, that's the moment. Once I realized, okay, you got to deliver, and you got to deliver on time, and you got to deliver these quantities, like, help. And I don't have an assistant. A lot of people do it that way, where they might hire an assistant or someone to do more of the grunt work or the parts that maybe you aren't so interested in doing, so that you can crank things out. But I would prefer just to send it off to someone else who's been doing bronze for 30 years and they just get it and understand what to do.
Yeah. And what are you thinking about now in your business? What's next for the House of Ladha?
Gosh, I have a lot of ideas. I want to keep expanding my fine category. It's been tough because the price of gold has just skyrocketed in the last handful of years. So from a cost perspective, it's a bit limiting. However, I'm finding more and more that's what makes my heart sing, and getting more into bridal jewelry, commitment jewelry, one-of-a-kind rings in the fine category, things like that I'm really interested in. But at the same time, I want to keep growing the fashion and just have my collection evolve in order to kind of level up in terms of just offering more newness to my customers, direct and wholesale. I've been kind of doing this slow growth, and I wouldn't say I'm at a plateau, but I know that there's more to do, and I think I just need a little time to just keep growing it. And I'm of that mindset of like, if you grow it, they will come.
Yes.
And then beyond that, I would love to have a brick and mortar one day.
What's your dream for that?
I would love a gorgeous store. I love stores. I love to just experience a store. I would love to have something where I would be selling my jewelry, maybe some jewelry from my contemporaries, people that inspire me, pulling in other styles and other designers, and then having it be more lifestyle. I love a candle. I love a glass. I love stationery and perfume, and there's all these beautiful lifestyle categories. Yeah. Ladha is a Swahili word that translates to flavor, taste, pleasure, or joy.
Oh,
it's kind of a catch-all. And so I always thought of having a store that would just, it smells good and it's aesthetically pleasing, and there's tactile things that you can hold and touch, and there's beautiful shiny jewelry and maybe a rack of very curated vintage clothing, and you just kind of put it all together and just get the vibe. So that's my reach goal. That's if brick and mortar retail even survives, which we'll see.
You know, I think though that like collaboration and partnership to make brick and mortar survive, it does feel like it's the next level. I know there's some stores in San Francisco that if brands have left retail, they've partnered with another store that's still there to sell their products in that way. Keeps it alive, and it differentiates it from e-commerce also.
Totally.
Where you are creating an experience.
Yeah, and I sell my jewelry to stores like that. Yeah. So I kind of see it working, and I love the community aspect of it too. And just like meeting someone at a show and saying, oh my gosh, you make this is gorgeous. I would love to carry this in a store one day. Maybe we can talk and make that happen. Yeah. I'm constantly keeping a little running list in my head of artists and products and ideas to incorporate into that one day. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I love that. Okay, well, I'll be there.
Cool.
And I'd love to end on talking about, for someone who is an aspiring jewelry designer or maker, what advice would you give them to someone who is curious about this path or wanting it to be not just a hobby that they're doing on the side, but something that they can really pursue full time?
Yeah, I would say start with the education. Just try to get as much hands-on education as you can, whether it's signing up for classes periodically or going to do like an intensive program at an actual metalsmithing school. And then really just immerse yourself as much as possible, not just in the education and the learning to make, but also go into stores, work at a jewelry store, sell to clients, sell other people's jewelry so that you understand how people respond and what the value of each piece is and what the materials are and just all those little things that go into a collection. And yeah, so I just really stand by immersion. If you can apprentice under someone or just work for another jewelry designer. I think that was so invaluable for me, just to have all that exposure and understand everything that goes into it from a firsthand standpoint. I know apprenticeships are harder to find these days, but take an internship if you can. Just offer to polish someone's castings once a week just so you can be in their studio and see how things work. But more than anything, just dive in as much as you can, just from all sides.
And if someone's even earlier stage than that, so just starting to be curious about that, wondering where to start as a side project or as a hobby, what are materials that you need or equipment that you can have at home that you can start something like this with?
Well, definitely, like, from the education starting point, you can look into your local recreation centers or city college, whatever the institution is near you that might offer some intro course. And that way you get into the studio and you're learning how to work with the tools, and you're seeing, okay, I need a saw, I need a set of files, pliers, just those really rudimentary basic tools that are going to help you form a piece of jewelry. You learn that really quickly when you take a course, because they usually provide all of that for you. So I think having a sturdy workbench, having a really solid set of just an electric flex shaft motor, like a Dremel, so that you can use different attachments. Like I said, pliers, files, a saw, polishing compound. Depending on what it is you want to make, that will dictate the tools you need. But taking a class is a wonderful way. They literally will give you a printout with definitions of what each thing does. And then you just go online and order the things that you've just learned how to use. So that's kind of what I did.
No, that's great advice. And if one person or if someone's going to listen to this whole episode, what is one thing that you would want them to take away?
Just that when you're a creative person and when you really just can't fight it and you have to just make something, just lean in, just do it. Whether it's a hobby, whether it's a career, just follow your heart and don't feel like you can't or you won't have time or you can't make time or it doesn't matter. This kind of stuff matters more than ever in our world today. And whether you're just making something for your bestie or you're trying to create a whole line of jewelry to then scale up beauty and handmade things, we have to continue putting them out in the world. And it's hard, and it can be not so easy or profitable, but sometimes it doesn't matter as much as just contributing and being a part of a creative society, which, as we all know, sometimes feels like it's dwindling a bit.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole mission and vision for this show, is to bring us back to really what makes us uniquely human and our ability to make and create and continue those crafts so that they dwindle back upwards.
Yeah. And when I was feeling so burnt out in my corporate life and just feeling like I wasn't using my hands and I wasn't able to really just dive in the way I wanted to, I remember saying to myself, I just want to be around beautiful things. That's just what my soul desires. And I think a lot of people feel that way, whether you're a maker or a consumer. I think putting beautiful things out in the world it's never going to hurt anyone. It's only going to help.
Yeah. And it's so easy to undermine that or make it feel like it's superficial and not a real thing that you are contributing. But there's so much value in that, just the way that you're impacted by your surroundings, your environment, all the things that are truly just beauty.
Yeah, 100%. It all kind of starts there for me. It's like just appreciate beautiful things, make beautiful things, share beautiful things.
I love that. Thank you so much for being here.
It's been lovely. Thank you so much.
I hope this episode left you feeling inspired and expanded. If you'd like to support the show, the best way is to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with the fellow craft workers or craft curious in your life. You'll find everything we talked about, including links to today's guest, in the show notes. You can follow the show on socials @TradesShow to stay up to date. And if you're listening, you can watch the full video version on YouTube. I would highly recommend. It's a treat. And if you're watching, you can stream the audio wherever you get your podcasts. If you have any questions, feedback, or guest suggestions, please reach out anytime. You'll find my contact information in the show notes or at thetradesshow.co. Until next time, stay creative, curious, and continue to honor your craft.